Buenos días y bienvenidos, mi gente. Today is a really special service, and while all services are special, we are talking about AIDS today, and that's not something that I think we've talked about as a congregation for sure in my time together, and it might bring up some feelings for us. We're going to hear Jim Gosling's voice for the first time in a really long time, and that might bring up feelings for some of us who remember Jim. And I want you to know that whether you experience feelings of anger or sadness or joy, or if you have tears, please remember that our emotions are gateways to life's deeper understanding. And that this space and our online space is the perfect space to let ourselves experience the full range of our emotions. Please know, beloveds, that you are a gift. I'm so glad that you're here. Remember that love is the spirit of all souls. And it has been since we've been saying this since 1903. I think it's our special sauce. And in this moment of our shared journey, I hope you feel witnessed and honored wherever you are, whomever you love, whatever your ability, gender, beliefs, political affiliation, or documentation status. You're welcome here, and you're never alone. I invite you now to please rise in body or spirit and greet your neighbors, maybe even sharing your pronouns as you introduce yourself. We'll return to the service with a gorgeous prelude.
Good morning. Welcome to All Souls. Welcome to all of those who are with us in the moment and to those who are catching us later on. I am Emily Salinas. My pronouns are she, ella. I will be serving as your worship associate for today's service. Together with Ms. Nancy Olson, Acting Director of Faith Formation, pronouns she, her, and Reverend Katie, our Senior Minister, whose pronouns are she, ella, we are your worship team today on the chancel. If you are visiting us this morning, we are glad you are here with us. People of all ages are joyfully welcomed in the service. Nursery care is also available if that option works best for you. I do invite everybody to please complete a connection card. This card should be found at the end of your pew, and it helps us know how to best stay connected and to support you on life's journey. Our caring team is an extension of the ministry team and is also here to support you. You can reach them by writing a note on your connection card or by email at pastoralcare@allsoulsindy.com. Our Soul Matters theme for this month is mystery. Sign up to check in the know to get the packet so that you can engage with these materials at home or at All Souls in person and online.
Thank you so much, Emily. I have some announcements for us. We have a congregational meeting today. And there's something really important on the ballot about being net carbon zero. So for those of you who are members, so now anyone is welcome to be here for the congregational meeting. It's just only members can vote. And to be eligible to vote, you must have signed the book 90 or more days ago and made a gift of record in any amount in the last year or been given a confidential waiver by me anytime in 2022 or 23. Everyone is welcome again to be present for the meeting. Grab a cup of coffee right after service, but then come right on back in because Jean Miller and Julia Van Dieren are going to start us off for this amazing congregational meeting that we're going to have. So democracy is a pillar of our faith. This is one of those moments where you members get to decide our direction and what you feel our faith is calling us to do in this moment in time. If you have questions about if you can vote, please see Jean Miller, our board president, who's in the back. And I also know that in the Come to Church with Us this Sunday, members, you can click on a link and you should be able to vote through a Google form. We are having 2 special services next Sunday. We have a 10 a.m. service. Please bring your favorite holiday cookie. And it'll be a little bit shorter service, so we have room for more cookies and together time. And then our Christmas Eve service, you are invited to come, whether you want to get dressed up or dressed down, or whether you want to wear an ugly sweater. I've bought my first ugly sweater ever for you this year. As we're approaching solstice, I feel like it's important to name the Kutlaxoshil, which is the name of these gorgeous plants that are on either side. These are an indigenous Aztec solstice plant. And it's important for us to remember that history. It was a colonizer named Poinsett who brought them from Mexico to the US. And they became named after him, but there is an indigenous history. So let us remember to continue to call out and raise and amplify the voices of indigenous ancestors. As we move more deeply into our time together, let us also acknowledge the land itself and those who have sustained it through the generations. For we are upon the unceded land of the Miamia, Kaskaskia, Shawnee, and Kickapoo people who were pushed from their land and whose children have been stolen for generations. As we strive to be a community of justice, may we continue to find ways to make reparations. I gift to you these words by the Reverend Julian Soto, who spoke here just a couple of weeks ago at the end of November. They say, "You are who I love." People lighting the chalice in hundreds of places, thousands of tongues of fire, singing the message. All are loved. We matter and belong. You are who I love. Elders staying home and reaching for the tools that keep us both safe and together. You are who I love. Parents holding tenderly all the risk and waiting. You I love. Kids who are dreaming of days of summer, hot and golden sun and freedom. You are who I love, the still afraid one, frowning and wondering if everything will ever be okay again. Beloved, yes. Where the sun rises, the hope of healing also shines. You are who I love, the keeper of the covenant, the emblem of our care. We each arrive imagining what is possible and come away festooned with an abundance of love and a bone-deep experience of grace.
Come on. This is the time when we light our chalice, and it's this ritual which reminds us to continually renew our promise, to live into our covenant, to put love into action, and to live out this community of love and justice we aim to be. Please rise in body or spirit. And the words to our covenant are listed in the order of celebration. We'll say them in Spanish first, and you will note, because I know you all have been paying good attention in your Spanish, with your Spanish, that there's a little bit of a good change. Amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es ley. Vivir juntos en la paz, buscar la verdad en el amor, y ayudarnos uno al otro, este nuestro pacto. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, this and of one another. This is our covenant. Thank you. You may be seated. You guys want to come up here with me? Hey. Oh, yeah, Snoopy can come. Everybody, come on up here. Annalise, where's Annalise? Do you want to join us up here? It's okay. It's your choice. So glad you guys are here today. So if you search children's books about AIDS on the internet, you are going to find that this book, Come Sit With Me, which was written in 1990, is still showing up as a really important book to share with children to help them learn more about HIV and AIDS. That's what, 33 years later, this book continues to come up. And what's also interesting to me is if you do some search on the internet about the prevalence of AIDS today, because it's been going on for quite a while, you will find that there has been a decrease in cases. There has been an increase in treatment options and people's being able to be treated. But there is still quite a bit of stigma and discrimination that is getting in the way of people getting all the treatment they may need and the acknowledgement. So this book is a little bit about that. And so I wanted to share it with you. You guys want to hold the book? You can kind of look at those pictures. They're kind of nice. So this book, it was written for young children, kids, probably kindergarten, because it talks about taking a nap during the school day. It also reminds me of Robert Fulghum's book, Everything I Know I Learned in Kindergarten. There's a little bit of that in this book, too. Yeah, and Unitarian Universalist minister. Yep, wrote many books. Anyway. So this book is about Karen. Karen, end of summer, Karen is going off to school. Everybody's excited, you know, they go to school and Karen walks in the door and, oh my gosh, Benjamin says, "Come sit by me." And Erica says, come sit by me, come sit by me. Everybody's happy to see Karen, and other kids too. But they're, oh, let's come sit by me. And so they do. And Karen has a great day. She swings, she plays, she gets to play doctor with her friends because her mother's a doctor, so she gets to be the doctor. They have a great time. But there's this new kid in school, and he's sitting over here in the corner by himself. And his name is Nicholas. That is right. And he's quiet. He's very well-mannered. He's not rude. He comes to lunch. He takes his nap. But he keeps to himself. That night, Karen goes home. She tells her mother she had a great day. In fact, she didn't even have a timeout. That's in the book. I'm not making that up. Says she doesn't even have a timeout. But she said, Nicholas is not my friend yet. And her mother goes, yeah, okay. So kids go to school. They continue to have fun, have a good time. One day, Karen comes home one night, and she says, Nicholas has been sick, and he hasn't been at school. And her mother said, well, do you know what's wrong with him? And she said, no, it's just many sleeps. He hasn't been here. Okay, it's getting cold. There's runny noses, sneezing, coughing, all that stuff happening, coats, hats, the whole thing. The next day, she comes home, and she says, what is AIDS? And her father says, it's an illness, but why do you ask? And she said, well, Sebastian's parents won't let him play with Nicholas because he has AIDS. So, let's remember that Karen's mother's a doctor. She kind of sidles up to Karen and she says, in your body, you have thousands and thousands of cells that help fight it. When you get a cold or you sneeze or you have a fever, they just work. They're mighty workers getting rid of that sickness. But with Nicholas, he doesn't have all those fighting cells, and so he doesn't get gets well as soon as you do. And Karen says, well,
if I play with him, will I get AIDS?
If I play with him, will I get AIDS? Mother says, no, everything you do with your friends, you can play together, you can sit next to each other, you can share toys. No, you're fine. Okay, goes on for a couple days. Karen's happy, she's playing with Nicholas, they're having a good time, he's her best friend. She comes home one day. Sebastian's mother won't let anybody play with Karen because Karen is playing with Nicholas. Oh, man. Well, this did not fly for those parents. They were not happy. They were very, very upset.
And they said, we need to have a meeting about AIDS.
And they said, we need to have a meeting about AIDS. And they called the parents, and they called the teachers, and they called the meeting. And you know what? This is a little bit like another story I told. Everybody came. Everybody came to the meeting, and everybody learned more about AIDS and HIV and AIDS. And that was good. And the next day, the kids played.
About dinosaurs.
They talked about dinosaurs, and little old Nicholas came in one day, and they were talking about dinosaurs, and the kids were afraid, and Nicholas said, I know about dinosaurs, and you do not need to be afraid. Oh, and so then, what happened? And then the kids said, it was time for circle time, and the kids said, Benjamin said, Nicholas,
Come sit by me.
come sit by me. Benjamin said, Nicholas,
Come sit by me.
come sit by me. Karen said, no, Nicholas, you come sit by me. And the teacher said to Nicholas, would you like to be our special helper today? And he said, yes, I would. And he was. So, this story is 33 years old. Come sit by me. What a lovely image of welcome, of inclusion, of invitation. Come sit by me. Come sit by me. And the other thing I love about that story.
Does the story,
Yep.
I know, it was made 33 years ago, but, what time does the story take place? Does it take place during the AIDS pandemic, or does it take place in the future? Does it take place in...
Such a good question.
It's supposed to be in the current present all the time.
It's a beautiful question Ada asks, what's the time frame for this? I think it was written as AIDS was peaking, HIV/AIDS was peaking. But as Nadia says, it's timeless, which thank you, Nadia, because that's the wrap up here. It's timeless. And the other thing I love about the story is how that family, how those parents, and how they modeled coming together and talking about things, and how that rippled out, and little Nicholas's life was changed. Because, hey, and my last thing is, you know the song from Frozen 2, do the next right thing. And that is part of what those parents and those families did. They did the next right thing, and the kids. And now we're going to sing hymn 302, and we're going to sing you guys out. Thank you.
Children of the human race, offspring of our Mother Earth, not alone in endless space, has our planet given birth. Far across the cosmic skies, countless suns in glory blazed, and from untold planets rise endless canticles of praise. Should some sign of others reach this our lonely planet Earth, differences of form and speech must not hide our common worth. When at length our minds are free, and the clouds of fear disperse, then at last we'll learn to be children of the universe.
So, I was 14 years old when I came across the autobiography, Ryan White, My Own Story. My mother had just recently found out that one of her close work friends, David, had been diagnosed with AIDS, and she had come home in tears. Until that moment, I wasn't personally aware of anyone that had the disease. At that time, during the early 90s, it was well known that AIDS was the leading cause of death among adult males aged 26 to 44. I had seen stories on TV about Ryan White and his fight against AIDS related to the discrimination right here that existed in his school in Indiana. And I recognized some of the common misconceptions about how AIDS is transmitted. And yet, David's diagnosis still scared me. This book, reading it, helped to ease some of those fears. Ryan White was only 18 when he passed away in 1990. He contracted AIDS sometime in the early 80s through contaminated blood given to him while receiving treatment for hemophilia. He was diagnosed in early 1985, and that July, he was prohibited from attending his local middle school. His mother bravely fought this decision, and after a lengthy court case, Ryan was allowed to return to school, only to face bullying from other students. His home was vandalized. His family was also harassed by the community. The media attention quickly catapulted Ryan to fame, sharing his story and often pictures of him posed with some of the biggest celebrities of that time, including Elton John, Michael Jackson. He differed from the commonly stigmatized populations most associated with AIDS, gay males, and people who used intravenous drugs. And so, rather than shunned, he was embraced as something of a poster child for the cause. And while his celebrity dispelled certain myths about who was being affected, some of the prejudices and those social hierarchies at the core of that epidemic were also reinforced. Who is innocent? Who is deserving of a cure? These stigmas worsened, and the result was unequal health outcomes. These disparities persist even today, as the ongoing HIV/AIDS epidemic is centered primarily within queer and trans communities and those of color. Still, he used this platform to wage against misinformation, fear, and hatred. AIDS, he said, was an infectious disease, nothing more, and it had the power to infect and harm any human being unfortunate enough to have contracted it. In 1990, his story inspired the federal Ryan White Comprehensive AIDS Resources Emergency, or CARE Act, in 1990, a bipartisan bill that provided more than $2 billion to help communities develop and maintain systems for the care and treatment, especially for the poorest people battling AIDS. The story of Ryan White is one that taught me the incredible power that stories hold. We know that stories have the ability to change hearts and minds. They carry on the legacies of those dear to us. And so today, I ask that you all reflect. What stories might you be able to share that may also create a path of liberation?
Good morning. Today I'm going to share a piece written by Kamal Fizazi, JD. This is written in November of 2022, titled To Achieve Equity and Justice. To achieve equity and justice, we must be visible. December 1st, 2002, Casablanca, Morocco. I'm afraid. I'm in bed, covers up to my chin, shivering and sweating. Kamelaki? On CNNI, there's a mother in rural China. Her son, home from his job in the city, is sick in bed, like you. He's dying. Do you have AIDS? Are you dying? No, Mom, it's the flu. It's been going around. I hear her worried voice still. It turns out it was HIV seroconversion illness. On World AIDS Day, 20 years ago, I became HIV positive. What happened? I was well informed. I co-founded the AIDS Awareness Coalition for Education in College, our first HIV peer education student club. I wrote my senior thesis on HIV prevention in the US and Morocco. I trained as an HIV pre- and post-test counselor. Still, years later, I was careless with myself, my body, my health. Self-destructive and in denial, I chronically and compulsively used drugs and sex to cope with undiagnosed ADHD, anxiety, CPTSD, and depression. It got bad. Thankfully, eventually, I found other ways to get relief, and I got better. What changed? I sought help. I got connected to care. I admitted I had a problem. I prayed for patience and acceptance. I dove into therapy. I found support and compassion. I let myself be loved. Today, I have HIV. It is undetectable, untransmissible. Today I strive to stay on a rightly guided path of healing, justice, equity, and compassion. I stay away from drugs and alcohol. The costs and risks outweigh the benefits to me. I seek to stay humble. I pray and ask for help. I offer it. Today, the compulsion has lifted. So why disclose? Sharing my story helps others and me as well. It helps me heal from shame, reconnect with community, and with resources. Muslims, I believe, must advance justice and equity via deeds, words, even thoughts. Visibility acts to blunt stigma and discrimination, advancing equity and justice. Being visible as a Muslim, given Islamophobia and racialized hatred, which is also harmful and can be internalized, is important too. Kamal Fizazi then goes on to share a prayer on how Islam sustains him through everything. Now, would you please join us in singing I Am Willing by Holly Near. The words are printed in your order of service.
Go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a reason, all my confusion. Give me the desert to hold my fears. Give me the sunset to hold my wonder.
may be seated. When the first whisperings of COVID began, how many of us thought that this would blow over, just like the scare around many other viruses, like the bird flu, swine flu? You feel me? Did you think maybe this isn't real and a pandemic just isn't going to happen? I know I kind of did. And I thought that same thing when Rock Hudson died, and one of my teachers shared that in a matter of years, every single person would know someone who died by AIDS. I remember sitting in my classroom thinking, this is not real. This is not real. And I just hoped that it wouldn't be true. I have spent the last decade in my ministry not talking about AIDS because it's personal. And as ministers, we aim to share only our well-processed thoughts. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would be so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. AIDS was a pandemic that my generation grew up with. And I grew up just a few miles from Fire Island in New York, which was in the 80s and 90s a haven for the gay community. It was a place where folks who were out in their lives, where they could have fun, and for those who had to stay closeted could be free. They could be themselves. It was heaven on earth for the queer community. And it would become an epicenter of grief and loss as the decades rolled on. There is a hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. I started to do some research for this sermon, and even looking at old photos from the New York Times, I saw faces that seemed familiar. Faces of folks that I think I may have met, likely at a party at my Uncle Kenny, my Uncle Tony, and my Aunt Anita's house. And let me tell you something, they had the best parties in their sweet Massapequa home. I grew up really blue collar. But Uncle Ken, Uncle Tony, and Aunt Anita had a household that was well supported by my Uncle Ken's executive income, and then the two of their incomes and their family of three certainly helped. And my parents had chosen this trio as the guardians of my brother and I if anything were ever to happen to them. And these three beloved people took that charge seriously. They took us to museums and art galleries and fun trips and things that my parents couldn't afford to do with us. They introduced us to foods that we wouldn't normally be connected with and taught us how to make a mean cocktail. My age-appropriate cocktails, they were age-appropriate, were Ovaltine with cocoa and a splash of vanilla over ice. Yes, and a seltzer with cranberry and just a twist of lime. You will still see me holding that seltzer with cranberry and a twist of lime whenever I'm out and about. Oh my goodness, they loved us unconditionally, and they believed that we could do anything. They showered us with love, introduced us to their amazing friends from all over the world. Many of them were in theater and film. They were working on Broadway. They were writing for Broadway plays and for commercials. And my Uncle Ken and my Uncle Tony and my Aunt Anita were among the first that convinced me that if I wanted to be the first woman in my family to go to college, that I would, and that I could do anything. And there weren't a lot of people in my life that believed that. My Uncle Al, a good friend of theirs, was always trying to get my mother to let my brother Rich and I into commercials. She always said no, and I still smile when I think of them. And the pain is also so deep because we lost them and their fabulous friends one by one. My Aunt Anita is the only one left. There is a panic in the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round. So many creative, incredible lives ended because of AIDS. They're still ending. But in this time period, I know I'm not the only one who had loved ones who died shrouded in stigma. My Uncle Ken, his brother, my Uncle Butchie, they died when I was in college, and they lived longer than a lot of their friends. And I know some of us, we couldn't even say why our loved ones died, but we can honor them, and we're going to do that today. The choir is going to sing Holly Near's song, I Am Willing Again, and I invite you to come forward and light a candle and say the name of your loved one that you lost. And for those of you online, please enter the name of your loved one in the chat. May they be present with us today in this space. Please come forward.
So lift me up to the light of change. In my family, there is sorrow. In my town, there is panic. In the nation, For to be hopeless would seem so strange. It is honors those who goes before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
Thank you. And I light these final candles for those who are online and for those of us who are holding the names in our hearts. I'd like you to join me in a responsive reading. Your words are simple, don't worry. When I raise my arms, please say, "Your presence is near." This has been written by Julie Lepp. We have not forgotten. In nature, we seek you in the whisper of the wind, in the new green wood. Your presence is near. We have not lost hope in the dust of the desert, in the rush of the wave, in the rise of the mountain. Your presence is near. We remember the cycle in the promise of blossoms, in the dying of leaves, in the bare branches. Your presence is near. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. And give me an ocean to hold my tears. Holly Near, the songwriter for I Am Willing, is a lesbian feminist UU singer and songwriter. She is a powerful activist. And it feels right at this turning point in our time together to raise up the voices of the lesbian community who were on the front lines of acting and organizing and caregiving during the start of the AIDS crisis. Their work, often invisible. Let us hold all of the helpers in our hearts, all of those who said, "Come, sit with me." Let us fast forward through time as well, through memories of babies born with AIDS, lives lost, trials that failed. There is grief, there is hope, and so many other feelings in that time period and even in this present moment. We've talked about when HIV was an immediate death sentence, the development of drug cocktails that were brutal and just barely life-extending. And now you can live with HIV, receive treatment. There's PrEP. Thank you, science. Thank you. You can have a viral load of 0. And yet the stigma remains. And prevention, early detection, and treatment is essential. Now, we have something here called Our Whole Lives Sexuality. It is a birth through end-of-life sexuality training program. Real sexuality training. Quality programming for all ages that helps us talk about how you can develop a healthy sexual identity for all ages, including understanding different types of protection, getting tested, and how all of this can lead to an ecstatic sex life. And we also support, as part of our faith, organizations like the Damien Center, which is here locally and provides testing and so many other resources. I want to invite you today to give in memory and in hope. In memory of those you've lost and with hope for those who may be saved, as we give to share the plate with the Damien Center. Today's offering will now be gratefully received, and we will hear Jim Gosling singing an original song. So those of you who remember Jim will hear his voice again. Thank you. Today's offering will now be gratefully received.
I don't want your sympathy. I won't burden you with pain. For every breath of life is for living, for love and forgiving. And I'm very much alive. I'm a long time survivor. If you look inside your heart, you'll be surprised at what you see. There's a little bit of you that's a little bit like me. Every breath of life is for living, for love and forgiving. And we were very much alive.
Science teaches us that our heart is made up of tons of neurons. It's like its own kind of brain. And I bet a lot of us today are feeling something in our hearts, whether we know it consciously or not, as those memories are being stirred. And here's the thing: as long as our hearts continue to beat, the memories of our loved ones live. As long as we have breath in our bodies, oxygen flowing to our cells, they live. When we tell their stories, they live. And their presence is near. So let us go forth from this space today as the keepers of memories, the sharers of memories, and the creators of justice, so that no one ever dies alone and stigmatized again. May everyone who we know feel the love that is the spirit of this church. May you feel it, and may you share it. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
Thank